Hey folks, I'm Nami Nomi, or just Nami if you'd like to call me that. I've been working on a mecha tabletop role-playing game called All Systems Go for a couple of years now, and I decided to start a YouTube channel, specifically to cover the development of All Systems Go, but also my other creative interests as well, which include writing tabletop role-playing games and even design. For this video though, I want to talk about All Systems Go specifically. I'm going to cover what it is and some of the core mechanics in light detail. We'll get into those in other videos. To start, All Systems Go is about taking the role of a heroic pilot, as if you're the protagonist of a mecha story like Gundam or a game franchise like Armored Core. The game focuses on options with a high degree of customization for both your pilot and their mech, which in this game is called a hardsuit. Through numerous options of tricks and parts, you can craft a unique and fun character that caters to your particular playstyle. In a sense, this game is kind of a character sandbox, as I've been calling it. In addition, there are a handful of mechanics that focus on storytelling and narrative. All Systems Go is a game that asks you to create characters who have something to fight and die for. Some kind of vision of a better world or personal motivation that they'd be willing to bet everything on. I know some of you dislike these sections, but before I dive into the mechanics and features, I just want to touch on how I actually got started. All Systems Go started in 2020 as sort of a pet project. I had homebrewed 2 versions of a mecha add-on for Savage Worlds, but eventually found that the core system just had substantial problems, especially in terms of long-term character growth. Savage Worlds is a perfectly fun game, it's got some issues, and maybe I'll touch on some of those later, but not right now. Anyway, I had a clear goal in mind. I wanted to create a system that ran fast, but still had room for fun and interesting character options. And you might be kind of wondering, why are these opposed in my statement? And that's because I actually played a lot of Pathfinder and D&D 3rd Edition and saw how more complex mechanics could easily bog down your play experience, practically to a crawl. I could go on a whole rant about that, so I'll just save it. So next is our core features. I'm not going to touch on every single feature, and I'm going to briefly explain them to the best of my ability. Starting with the core mechanic. This game uses a 2d10. You add them together and you add your relevant bonuses such as your skills or modifiers from weapons. You divide the total by 5. So if you roll a total of 17, you have 3. This is how many marks you have, and marks are sort of like a resource to spend. Most tasks will simply require a set number of marks, such as 3, 4, 5, 2, whatever it is. But some will actually be trying to see how high your character can go. We call this an open check. And others actually compare two characters. These are opposed rolls or versus checks, as they're called in All Systems Go. In these cases, they actually equalize until you have a clear winner. So if your opponent has 3 marks and you have 4, then you come out on top with 1. You can also spend marks on various effects outlined in the core rules, or depending on tricks and parts, you can spend marks on new options that will be more specific to the way your character is set up. Next up, we have Unity, which is a meta mechanic, as some people may call it. It's a resource that every player gets every session that can be used to help their allies. Yes, allies specifically. There are other systems that allow you to use Unity in more unique and specific ways, some of which do break this rule and allow you to use them on yourself, but usually with some specific context. Enemy combatants get a similar mechanic in the form of command points, which are only given to commanders. These aren't fully worked out yet, so I'll touch on them in a future video, but for now just understand they're like reverse Unity. On to pilots. Pilots have 2 main features. These are skills and tricks. Skills are flat bonuses that determine what your character is and isn't good at. They drive most of the game. Tricks, on the other hand, are special abilities that are purchased that grant new features and mechanics. These are kind of like feats or edges in other game systems, if you're familiar with those. In addition, pilots have a set of traits. These are role-playing tools in a sense. They're not set in stone, but rather the players actually write them in. If you've ever seen D&D 5e's Bonds, Flaws, and Ideals, then this may be actually a bit familiar. You are writing in descriptive text that explains the character's background, their upbringing, or their personality. There's of course a lot more to them than that, and a key feature is that between operations, which you can just consider this game's version of an adventure, you're asked to consider changing at least one trait, and you are rewarded with a little bonus XP if you do. This helps facilitate roleplay and character growth throughout the game. Your preppy, enthusiastic pilot who is naive and young begins to turn into a sour and bitter veteran, or the cocky, arrogant hotshot is humbled and learns to temper his attitude. These are the kind of stories that ASG is looking to actually tell. Another mechanic that pilots have access to, specifically player character pilots, are things called bonds. These are abilities and options that expand what you can do with Unity, with most all of them being still focused on teamwork. The abilities are laid out on a track of 6 tiers, and when your character and another character interact in a meaningful way, you can move them up this track, which grants you the option of using that ability with that character. So, for example, you might have a character in a situation where they're in a bad spot, they're being cornered, and another player character decides to go out of their way, risking life and limb to come and save them. That could be a meaningful interaction. Or they might just be discussing a plan with their commander, and one of the player characters decides to stand up for the other one's idea. This could also be a meaningful interaction. Anytime you feel that these characters could get closer as a result of it, they can go up and bond. So now we are on to the hard suits. These are your mechs. They are built from a set of parts which provide specific stats, and I will admit there are a lot of stats. The good thing is that the math for hard suits is actually quite straightforward. It's all simple addition or subtraction, and the numbers are relatively small. Hard suits can also equip weapons, obviously, as well as modules and souls. Modules provide minor useful features, while souls are core components that can drastically alter your playstyle. They can provide bonuses such as permanent flight, optics which can see through almost anything, or a chassis that gives you multiple arms for multiple guns. So it's 2025. You're probably asking, what's taking so long? Well, life is honestly the short answer. I've been juggling work, commissions, and doing even some RPG projects on the side. Particularly, I was the map artist for Luna Publishing. They were making 5th edition Gothic horror modules, which were super cool. I also ended up somehow becoming the layout artist for a Final Fantasy fan project called Final Fantasy Legend Edition. You can check them out on itch if you'd like. I was pretty happy to work on a Final Fantasy project. It's a franchise I love to death. And I think I did a pretty good job. But that's mostly been wrapped up. We're at 1.0, and I'll be coming in to touch up for 1.1, and that's mostly just text changes and corrections. No biggie. So, anyways, that's my little introduction to ASG. I'll be posting more updates as I make progress on the game, which reminds me, if you're curious of when it'll be out, my goal is within the next year, but obviously I'm not a fortune teller. Life has a funny way of throwing wrenches, you know? If you have any interest in creativity, writing, role-playing games, or even a little bit of art, I'd love for you to subscribe and follow me in this journey. I've got plenty of ideas for videos, even some role-playing related ones about storytelling and collaborative games. It's been rolling around in my noggin for months. Anyways, thank you, and have a good day.